What's going on, guys? This is a short video to share with you my keybinds for Farming Simulator 22. So if you are running a side panel and a G29 steering wheel, and I believe the settings should translate pretty well over to a G920 if you're using that and you're on PC, these settings should help solve a few of the issues. I don't want to say issues, but if you've used a side panel before and you love it, but you know it's limited a little bit on the vehicles you can control, like forestry equipment that's difficult because you don't have all the movement of it, then stay tuned and I will share with you my keybinds that make things a little easier. It changes a few things from the base setup, but I feel like it definitely adds a little more control in your favor, and also it allows for full control of whatever vehicle. So let's get started. If we go into, oh, side note too, for those of you on Steam, if you sorry, let me rephrase that. If you have, I had to save that. If you have the Power Tools menu and you're on Steam, and F12 is obviously the screenshot, you can change it to F11, which is basically what the thing is anyway. So that aside, okay. Gamepad controls. So basically what we're going to be focusing on in this video is steering wheel controls and side panel controls. Now most of these I'm not actually going to touch or change. I'll just leave them the way they are, but I will change a few and I'll explain why and what they're going to do. So first of all, let's see. When we get down to this one, start stop engine. Typically it's R2, I believe, in square on the steering wheel, which is funny because I'm pretty sure it's like R1 in square on PlayStation controller. But I use the big circular enter button on the steering wheel as my basically my ignition. Works really well. It's right there in the middle. I don't know, it just feels a little better than having to hit like 3 buttons to start it. So the return or enter button on the Logitech steering wheel, surrounded by the red collar, that's the one I use for my start stop. Next, it's listed in here as L2 R2 cross, or in this case, X. For the change driving direction, I find it really handy to switch that to left trigger, right trigger, which are basically your paddle shifters, because I don't use the paddle shifters on the wheel. Eventually I will get the 6-speed shifter situated so that I can use that, and I'll figure out the extra gear thing later. But for now, this is just for your vehicles, and I'll show you when I get to that point. Basically, you click both your paddle shifters and the X, and then you can change your driving direction. So it's handy without having to use either keyboard commands or taking up a spot on your side panel. So that's another one. Let's see. I'm going down through them because I don't remember everything I've changed. So when I find something that is, all right, moving on. Let's see. Like I said, for the most part, a lot of these I've left. Your attach tool, your next tool, all that stuff. I did change dump, okay? Now, 17 and 18 on the side panel, if you have your side panel next to you, the blue buttons, your 17 and your 18. One is hire worker, and I can't for the life of me remember what the other one is. I think it was change view or something like that, or enter exit the vehicle. Well, I basically do that with the E key on the keyboard. The base, because you move with the keyboard unless you're running a controller. So I did away with that. I unbound that one, and I bound the dump to 17. So it's right above the detach, the 19, which is detach. It's right above it. So that's the dump. And then down here, I have unload also on 17. So depending on what you're dumping into, sometimes it will allow you to dump, sometimes it won't. You know what I mean? Depending on what you're dumping into. So if you have unload and dump on the same button, it tends to be fine for trailers, at least that I've found. The other one I did put to something else, though, is the dump on ground, which is, obviously dumping on ground. And I put that to 23. That's that little middle button that most people think doesn't have a function. It actually does, and I'll tell you what that is in a moment. But the nice thing about most of these buttons is you can have multiple functions on the same button. It just depends on what implement is connected as to what the function will actually do. Okay. I also have changed bail size to 9 so that you can alter the bail size from the side panel, which 9 is typically, like in this instance right here, is the straw swath, which I also changed, and I believe it's changed seeds. No, that's 10. Seeds is 10. But it's basically your 9s and your 10s are your altering output sizes or things like that. So like I said, that's your 17 is the dump, and then 23 is the dump on ground. Now I'm trying to remember where I put. You'll have to forgive me for 1 second because I forgot one thing and I'm trying to remember where it is. There is use object right here. I took out the gamepad control. I unbound it. I don't remember what it was, but I use 18. So right next to 17, the other blue button, I use that as my use object. So when you pull up into a silo and you need to fill it, that button will fill it. That button will basically use whatever it is and allow you to fill or interact with a slurry tank and to load it up, etc. So that is really nice because now you've got your basically your load, your unload, your connect, your disconnect, all your buttons are on your side panel. The hire worker I just left bound to the circle button on the steering wheel. So because I don't hire workers very often, or I think it's H if I remember correctly on your keyboard. So you have multiple ways of doing it. For the worker, which would have been, I believe 18 is the one that got reset to this. But the use object, like I said, it works really nice that you can have the fill and the dump and all that stuff all on the side panel. Okay, so the next thing that, okay, so front loaders, right? If you've used the side panel before, you know that telehandlers are kind of a no-go. You get most of the function, but you can't actually extend the boom, right? The telescoping portion. So what I did was, on the G29, and I don't know if the G920 has the same function, but on the bottom left-hand side, parallel to the enter button, there is a plus and minus button. I basically put the extend to the plus and contract to the minus, and we'll show you that in a moment. Now cranes, this is where it gets interesting because typically speaking, you've got a few functions but you don't have all of them. I've got it so I've got all the functions. So you normally have the rotate left and right, so when you move left and right it turns, obviously. And then you've got your raise, right? And that is your if I remember correctly, that is your typical up and down, okay? Now, what I did was, now give me 1 second, because I'm trying to, okay, yeah, so you got your left and right, and this is the one that's normally bound. Your Y is 2, and that's what lifts like the main arm, but the secondary arm you can't move, right? So what I did was I bound the twist function of the control stick. Now obviously there's two functions to this. You have when the light is blue and when the light is red. And when you're in a tractor, one allows you to look around and the other interacts with stuff, right? So the one that allows you to interact with stuff, like moving telehandlers and stuff, that twist is now mapped to raising the crane arm or lowering it, which is the secondary arm portion. Again, I will show you this in a moment. Extend crane arm and retract. I did the same thing as I did with the front loader telehandler. So the plus and minus on the steering wheel. So you still get the boom extension. And then the last one is rotate crane tool right and left. So whether it be the claw or whether it be the tree harvester itself, what I did with this was when you press the button for the control of the stick, right? So it takes it from the function to the looking around. I mapped it to the twist in the look around, because when you're using it as a visual, the twist doesn't do anything anyway. So I mapped that to the crane tool. And again, I'll show you that in a moment. So, as long as I believe, and I could be wrong here, I believe that's everything. Oh, I have guidance steering set to the L2, R2, L3, R3. Side note, if you're using guidance steering, if you're not, then don't worry about it. But if you are, basically I've got the L2 is to turn it on and off, which is kind of central. And then your R2 is your auto width. And your guidance point is your R3, so when you're doing the A to B or whatever, you can get your setting, your bearing. And then steering guidance is L3, and I mapped it that way because typically if you've got your hand on the side panel, the L3 is easy to just click on and off when you're, lining up your next track or whatever. So that one I'm not going to show today, but you get the gist of it. If you've used guidance steering, you know how it works. But that's, for me, that works really nicely as like a, turn it off, set it, and then good to go, and you don't have to keep pressing keyboard keys or whatever. It's all right there within your reach of your hand. So let us take a quick look at a couple things. As I said before, your telehandler, and then like I said, enter button for start, at least for me, that's the way I like it. So you've got your normal, your tilt, all that stuff, but now you hit the plus on your steering wheel, and now you can boom it out while you're moving it or tilting it or all that stuff. It makes it really nice because now the telehandlers are basically usable if all you're using is a steering wheel and side panel. So that's why I like that. Now we will go real quick to so as I said before, paddle shifters and X right there at your fingertips. Now I'm rotated around. 10 to unfold, which is kind of weird because most of your implements are either 5 or 4. Okay, so as I said, typically speaking with this, your normal mapping is your up and down is this secondary boom, right? And your left and right is your turn. Okay, that's what you normally have. Now what I've done is on the main mapping of this, right? If I rotate, if I twist, now I've got the secondary. Okay, so I can come up and let me turn this on real quick. So now I can twist to lower, move that up and down to fine tune, turn, twist, and of course I don't have access to this land. Give me 1 second so I can buy a chunk so we can see this in action. Alright, so you got your up, your down, like I said, and then you need to get a little closer. You want to get a little closer to the ground. Your twist is how you get the secondary function. You've still got your swing, and if, as I said before, I have the rotation, and I'll try and zoom in so you can see this. So this is your this is your view with the control stick, right? Well, the twist is now mapped to this. So you've got the function of that. Now granted you have to click back to do the other movements, but it's all on the one. You click back to your visual and you get the twist. It's not a perfect system, but it works, and as I said, I like it because it allows you to actually use these. Oh yeah, and as I said before, let's say you're a little too far. Now you're just booting out. and that's using the plus and minus on the steering wheel, as I said before. So basically you've got all the functionality you normally had, plus some more. So you can do everything with just the steering wheel and just the control stick. And then cut, which is 5. Oh yeah, and I believe, now granted I have a little, I've got a informational thing up top which is super handy. I forget which mod that is. I believe it's in the mod hub, it might not be. But now I know what my cutting length and all that stuff is. Now granted, I'm not doing it for that mod, I'm doing it for this one. And the reason I'm continuing to cut this is I want to show you with the Grapple the same thing, that it works the same, but there's also another feature that I have yet to say. So we'll move this out of the way and we'll shut this down. Okay. Alright, and just like before, your paddle shifters in X. Oop, gotta start it first. Paddle shifters in X. Now I'm flipped around. Now I don't think, if I remember correctly. Okay, yeah, you don't need to unfold this one like you do with the other one. So, as I said before, twist is your main boom, and then your up and down is your secondary boom. Alright, so, like before, you got your left, your right, your up, your down. Your plus and minus is your telescoping, just like the telehandler, just like the other one. And your twist is your up and down on the main, so you can get it where you need. Now, just like the harvester, if you click your little buttons, and now you're on the visual, right? Now you can twist. Now this is where it's interesting, right? Everyone thinks that 23 is a useless button. And the red button on your control stick, 23 opens the claw, the red button closes the claw. So that's what they're actually mapped to, and that's base. I did not change those, that's what it's normally mapped to. So, as I said before, come down, takes a little getting used to, but the fact that you can do it, fine tuning. And I played around with this for about an hour once I kind of got the settings that I liked, and you do get used to it. But like I said, the red button for the claw is the closing, and then 23 is the opening. So that, you can play around with and get the way you like. I am going to move this a little bit so I can see better. Alright, so do that. Alright, let's see if we can grab these. Now granted, unfortunately the claws and the hitboxes and everything for logs are a little, let's say, not as nice, I feel, as they were in the last game. But but as you can see, I can do everything showcasing it spectacularly, but you get the gist. And if you like logging or you like using, implements and stuff like that, this is, short of buying a full-on setup, this is probably the easiest way to do it. So, as I said, that was just some key bindings that I like. And the main reason for making this video was to show you that you can actually use forestry equipment and telehandlers and such with just the G29 and the side panel. Now granted, the other bindings, like I said, like your dump and stuff like that, it's all self-explanatory. If you mapped it out to what I said, you know, your 17 will be your dump, your normal dump at a sell point or dump at a production point. Your 18, which is your other blue button, will be your load from something, like load from a silo, load from a buy point, load from a slurry point, whatever. And then your 23 will be your dump on ground completely. Your 9 will double as your change bale size. And also, I am going to look real quick at one other thing, because there was one other that I can't for the life of me recall, and I know it ended up being 9. It was something, it was like unload bales. And I think it was because of how it was mapped to something else. Tool function 3, I believe. So, which is normally 9. This is what it is in the from the base, right? But your 9 is, like I said, not only change bale size and toggle straw swath, but 9 being tool function 3. When you have a baler, you shut the baler off. You use 9 and it will unload the baler. So, another function for you. So, like I said, for the most part, that covers just about every tool and or function that you would typically use on the day-to-day. I mean, granted, there's going to be other ones you find or new mods that come out that, you know, are going to change that or add a function, and obviously, you know, map it out how you like. That's the whole point. But I figured I would give you guys some pointers and some, like, this is what I use, and this allows me to utilize forestry equipment, and especially, like I said, telehandlers was the big thing. In 19 on console, and even at the end when I switched to PC, I never used telehandlers because I couldn't. Because what good's a telehandler if you can't telehandle? If that makes sense. But now, you know, I figured out a way to make it work, and I wish I had thought of it sooner. But yeah, so I always ended up having to switch and use a controller for any of those pieces, but now I don't. So hopefully this helps. If you guys liked it, drop a like on the video, and you know, I'll see you guys on the flip side. Peace.